Welcome to Live Well, Dream Big. I'm Suzanne Monroe, founder of the International Association of Wellness Professionals, where I've been teaching people how to live a life of wellness, tap into their passion, and go for their dreams for over 15 years. I believe living well and dreaming big starts with ourselves. This podcast will show you how to create a healthy, holistic life, empower your mindset, follow your dreams, and make a big impact. Let's dive in right now. Welcome to Live Well, Dream Big. I'm excited for today's episode, and our topic is goal setting for lasting success. And the lasting word in there is really important because so many people set goals but never reach them. And if you're one of those people, you can feel like, what's wrong with me? Or you can be beating yourself up about it, or just feel like that the goal that you set was never really possible for you. Here today, we're going to get your mindset changed around all this. I'm having an action-packed conversation with one of my team members, Laura Albers, who is a goal-setting goddess. And this is not your average, how to set goals and make them happen. We're going to dig in a little bit deeper today to get to the bottom of this, because the truth is most people set goals and the majority of them never reach them. So if you're listening, whether it's at the start of the new year and you want to do your resolutions differently this year, or if it's later in the year and you want to just get back on track, this episode is going to help you do that. We're going to talk about personal goals. We're going to talk about business and career goals. And we're also going to talk about supporting others to reach their goals. So let's get started. Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be talking with you today about goal setting for lasting success. So whether you want to set goals for yourself personally or in relationship to others that you might be supporting, or in your business or professional life, today we're diving into it all. And it's really a great topic for the beginning of the new year, if you're listening then, or anytime throughout the year if you find yourself getting off track and really wanting to start moving toward the dreams you have for yourself in your life. I'm joined today with IAWP Master Holistic Wellness Coach, Laura Albers, who is also a mental health therapist, the founder of Albers Mind and Body Wellness, and she specializes in productivity and mindset, and goals is one of her favorite topics. Hey, Laura, welcome out there.
Hi, Suzanne. So glad to be here, especially for this one.
Yeah, I'm super excited about our topic. And, I'm really glad we're having this chat today because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding around setting goals. And there's like almost a certain amount of shaming of ourselves for not reaching goals that we set. But we really never knew how to do it in the first place. We've never really been taught. And it's kind of an interesting phenomenon. Like, why do we set goals only to not achieve them? And then like keep repeating the same pattern of setting the same goals year after year. What's going on? And you may have heard this statistic that 80% of people fail to achieve their New Year's resolutions. Why is that? Year after year, we set the same goals and we don't reach them. It can be due to lack of clarity that people have and how to actually reach their goals. It can be due to lack of support to actually make it happen. It can be due to our own kind of subconscious mind and programming that's kind of getting in the way of helping us to go to the next level. It can also be that we simply set goals that are just too far out of reach for where we are, and we don't know how to take the smaller steps to help us get there. So today we're going to dive into it all, and we're going to talk about really kind of breaking the endless cycle of resolutions that are never reached, this whole idea of ineffective goal setting, and instead learn how to set goals that support you to create lasting success and really keep moving forward toward your vision, all without beating yourself up along the way. So let's dive into our 3 steps on goal setting for success. And as with most things, it really starts with yourself. Right? So before you can set goals for your professional life or your coaching practice or your business or your career or how you want to help others, you really do have to kind of start with yourself, which is why step 1 is a personal step, and it's all about uncovering your intention. And I'll say what I found personally is that resolutions are kind of more like ultimatums. They are asking something of us that's really like outside of our normal habits. It's kind of like dangling a carrot in front of us. And then when we don't reach them or we fall short, we like feel like a failure and we just give up. It's kind of like this do or die mentality with a goal and with resolutions, which is why I prefer to set intentions. I think resolutions are something we have to do, but intentions are something we want to become. or how we want to live. And the distinction is that intentions are about really where we see ourselves going versus something we just have to do. The distinction I think is important because a resolution or a goal by itself is really just kind of like another item on our to-do list rather than something we really want to embody for ourselves. And an intention, I think, can be more of a word or a phrase that we truly want to live by. It's a greater vision. And if we miss the mark one day, that's okay. We can simply realign to that intention. And it's really more about how we want to live and who we want to become. Let me just take a simple example before we get too far along. Let's say you are somebody who overspends outside of your budget, okay? And then you feel guilty afterwards. If you simply set a resolution to stop overspending, you may or may not accomplish it because it's just a goal without really any meaning or action or a bigger why as it relates to who you want to be and how you want to live your life. With an intention, you get to dig in a little bit deeper and really understand why you want to reach that goal. And it can support you as to why you want to stop overspending. So it's really about looking more at why you have the goal. What is the purpose for it for you? Like, what is that deeper meaning? And in this example, maybe the intention is that you want to spend responsibly so you can have money left over to be able to dedicate to a cause you believe in, right? That's just kind of a simple example. The cause itself is really important to you. It's just like something that's a part of your heart and soul and your values. And maybe you want to spend responsibly so you have money left over to do that. Or maybe another example is you want to spend responsibly so you have money left over to create experiences and special memories with your children or your grandchildren, rather than spending on things that will be outdated within a few months, as we are living in the world that we live in today with technology, right? The next thing is always coming out and no one's going to play with it anymore in a few months. So you can see the intention's a little bit different, right? First of all, it's stated in the positive. You're saying, I choose to spend responsibly versus I'm not going to overspend. But it also ties to this bigger vision and this sort of this reason behind the goal, what it would mean for you if you reach that goal. So I choose to spend responsibly so I can create meaningful experiences with my family, right? The resolution sounded more like, okay, I will stop overspending, right? You're kind of coming from this negative, but you're focused on the overspending and there's just no meaning behind it. There's nothing personal about it. And so the meaning creates motivation is really what it is. And the intention is, again, about how you want to live, not just something you can or cannot do. So I think when it comes to setting goals for yourself, starting with an intention is super important. And then you can kind of start breaking it down with action steps and goals that fit under the intention. We'll be talking about that a little bit later. But Laura, let's pop over to you. What are your thoughts on setting goals and this whole idea of intentions and goals and just setting goals for yourself, and any tips that you have as it relates to doing this on a personal level?
Yeah, well, I love everything that you've said so far, and especially about language being really important, and how we're choosing to talk about our language and really creating that intention. So I love everything that you share, and I just wanted to share maybe 4 kind of quick tips on personal goal setting. So tip number 1 is to start with clearing instead of adding. And this is especially true if you are already exhausted or overwhelmed, which I would imagine many of us, especially maybe this time of year, might be feeling a little bit exhausted and overwhelmed. And so I just think a lot of like self-care advice and tips and resources and things like that suggest, to meditate, to exercise every day, to journal. And, Suzanne, you and I both know, like, those are amazing things, right? Those are positive, healthy habits. But often when you're, again, already overwhelmed, exhausted, and ruled by your to-do list, it can feel like yet another thing that I should be doing, or, another way that, as you kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, another way that we can feel guilty or beat ourselves up. So I always find that self-care, for me anyway, my focus of self-care is to always start with clearing first, clearing sort of what's not serving you, whether it's actual clutter in your environment or, saying yes to everything, things in your calendar. Like, there's lots of different ways that we have clutter. So tip number 1 is to start with clearing instead of adding. Tip number 2 is to not be a zebra. That's what I like to call it. So sort of this idea of like this all or nothing, good or bad, black or white, success or failure, either or. And often when we use that kind of language, we set ourselves up for failure, really, because it's like, okay, well, if I didn't, if I intended to journal, 5 days a week and I missed a day, then somehow often we think that we failed or we have a hard time like getting back to it. So I like to think about it being more as like a get back on track specialist, so we're always just kind of getting back to that vision and intention, as you mentioned earlier. So tip number 2 is to not be a zebra. Tip number 3 is to create one personal or self-care / health goal that's going to go into your WHAM. And some of you guys may have heard of this idea of the WHAM before, but don't worry, we're going to dive into that in step 3. So stay tuned on that for a moment. So just kind of keep that in your mind sort of for right now. And then last, I just wanted to share one of the things that I feel like we're not really great about with setting goals, creating habits, is we don't celebrate. And that might seem really obvious or silly or not necessary, but it's truly crucial, because what it does, like when you celebrate immediately, and that's the key here too, so celebrate immediately after you complete your tiny habit or your, a step in the goal that you're working on, the habit gets wired into your brain more quickly and on a much deeper level. So we really want to start getting in the habit of celebrating anytime we have those tiny habits. And I just want to share a couple ways that, you can celebrate and have fun with this. It can be simply giving like a yes or a yay, or clapping for yourself, or maybe you're doing a happy dance. Maybe you're picturing your kids clapping for you or your partner cheering you on, or you're picturing fireworks going off. But the key is to find something that is meaningful and sort of fun for you so that you can reinforce these behaviors. So I'd be curious to hear kind of, Suzanne, what you think about, some of those tips, or if you've got a fun way that you like to celebrate.
Well, I just love that you included the celebration part. Let's just stop there. I don't want to brush over this, right? Because on one level, it can seem like, oh yeah, okay, celebrate myself, yay, pat myself on the back.
Mhm.
But what I can tell you is, and I personally struggle with this. In fact, I'm actually kind of struggling with it right now. So this is like, oh, this is really hitting home, because as much as I know that, and maybe I do that in small ways, I think for those of us, as you get on the path of like setting goals, and if you're especially if you're like an overachiever, it can be really easy to accomplish something and give kind of the proverbial like, yeah, good job. But then like just keep pushing forward, right? And
Yes.
like this is really about acknowledgement, is what I hear you saying, Laura. Like you help you change the habit, but you acknowledge yourself. But I also see it as, this is sort of a way of being, because if you just keep moving forward without that acknowledgement, I mean, a lot of things can happen. One, you can just burn out, but two, you're not saying to yourself, you're not acknowledging yourself and allowing yourself that energy to be like, hey, I don't have to always be pushing forward, right? Like I have to have kind of a balance here. So there's this goal setting, which feels like, because we've all been taught, like, be effective, be productive, keep moving forward, right? So this idea of like pausing, even just for like a short while to do a self-care or something, feels like, I don't know. Sometimes it feels like, okay, this is not, a good thing to do, right? So we have to almost rewire our mind. And I love how you're suggesting start in a small way, do it as you have these little habits. But for some of us, it might be that you have to take even a bigger pause and you have to keep really acknowledging yourself, because you don't want to burn out, number one. And number two, if you keep pushing forward, there's going to be some level of resentment and you're not going to have that joy toward the goal, right? Like you want to have that joy and energy, enthusiasm, because you set a goal that something is meaningful to you, right? But if you don't have that pause, I think that it starts to take away that joy and you really lose that energy part of it. So I don't want people to underestimate this celebration tip. I love that you shared it.
Well said. Well said.
I mean, it's crucial, right, guys? So like, yeah, start out small, do it to ingrain the habit, as Laura is saying. But if you find yourself like where you're not allowing yourself that pause or that time to like rest, reflect, and take in all that you're creating before you move on to the next thing. Yeah, this can be challenging. So that's kind of where I've been right now, as I said, and I'm just taking this in. I'm really going to, I think, rest and reflect and celebrate some of my accomplishments, because the next thing is always there, right? There's always more on the to-do list or on the goal list. So we've got to really make this a part of our habits, like you're saying. I love that.
Mhm. Yeah. And we're not about just doing all the time. We're human beings instead of human doings too. So I like to kind of keep that in mind too, because I can easily fall into that sort of that trap, as you kind of said too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So step one was really uncover your intention. And let's talk about step two. So we just kind of talked about for ourselves personally. Many of you listening in today are helpers, healers, coaches, people who are supporting others in your life, right? And whether it's family and friends or actually clients or just people where you're that support for them. And I want to talk a little bit about helping others in our lives. And in this step two, it's called chunk the goals. This is something you can apply to yourself, but especially if you're helping others as well, and other people you're supporting in your lives, because obviously we don't live in a box. We have goals for ourselves, but sometimes they involve other people, maybe people we're in relationship with or people we're supporting, whether it's partners, children, friends, right? Or coworkers, even coaching clients for those who are in this field, coaching clients. So how do we, as the guides, the supporters, the motivators, step in to support other people to reach their goals, right? We can help them set an intention like we talked about in step one versus just setting meaningless goals, right? But we also want to help people to break down things into smaller bite-sized chunks, because these smaller bite-sized chunks are going to be what's going to allow you to have success, right? Because we want to make these smaller steps. And the truth is, when someone wants to reach a goal, they probably have had this goal before, right? I mean, maybe it's new, but it probably is a version of a goal they've had in the past, and they haven't been able to get there for some reason. So, especially if they're coming to you for help or advice or support, it's because they do need support. They need someone to guide them and maybe to do it differently for the first time. Um, and maybe they've set like a really big, lofty goal, but they didn't have those tools or support or resources to move toward it. So, rather than giving somebody like a big, long to do list of things to make it happen, if you're supporting someone, you want to help them to break down the goal into these mini steps. In coaching, we call this chunking, right? These chunks literally make things just more doable. And they also help us to align all those steps and the goals with the bigger intention. So there's really a process here to looking at that bigger intention and breaking it down. And we have to see it in tiny steps in order to make it a part of our reality, in order to bring it into the everyday. That's the thing, right? Sometimes we have a big goal out there, but how it plays out in the everyday is where we get lost. And Laura, I know you're big on breaking things into these mini steps. Tell us a little bit more about your thoughts on how to chunk, how to break goals down, especially if we're helping somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is so critical to break your goals down into tiny habits, into tiny mini sub steps. And I like to kind of ask myself these two questions. And I may even add a bonus third question. But the two questions I'm going to start with is, how can I make this tinier? And how can I make this easier? So those are two really great questions to ask. Again, how can I make this tinier and how can I make this easier? And I think just really looking at, because often we make them way too big and way too vague, as kind of, as you said, like for those of you that are IAWP students or maybe considering becoming students, like, sometimes I'll see things like finish the program or, even something even a little bit bigger of like finish, module 10. And you really can actually break that down into much smaller pieces, so maybe it's just do wellness messengers of module 10 or something like that. So going through your habits or your to-dos, your to-do list, and really asking yourself and looking at your goals, how can I make this tinier and how can I make this easier to do? And then I also think it can really help to pair your new habit or your new action with an already established habit or routine. So I think that's also critical there too, which is, so like, for example, like while you're brushing your teeth, maybe you're thinking of 3 things that you're grateful for. So brushing your teeth is something, hopefully, I would think all of us do every day. So it's something that you're already doing. It can be great to kind of anchor that new behavior that you're sort of adding to that. Or maybe it's, you're doing 5 squats while you're waiting for your food to warm up in the microwave. And often we underestimate how these tiny little habits and these little mini sub steps really propel and move us forward. And then we're going to talk about that more, in step number 3, and kind of dive into that a little bit deeper even. But I really think it's all about, how can I make this tinier? How can I make this easier on myself? And then the third sort of bonus question is, what obstacles might I run into? And many of you guys are familiar with that question, because that is part of core coaching method, of really understanding and identifying what are the obstacles, and then how can I start to overcome them.
Okay, I love it. Tinier and easier.
Tinier.
That's good. Tinier and easier, right? So like if you have a goal and it's feeling like, hey, I'm not moving toward it, or it's feeling overwhelming, or I don't know how to get there, likely you haven't made it tinier and easy enough, right? So like it could actually have 100 steps in a goal, right? Like there could be a lot of steps to it. So like breaking it down is super important. And also like, yeah, you're keeping that vision out there, but you're not getting overly tied to the bigger goal, because there are a lot of steps to do along the way. Just as another example, let's say you're helping somebody else to reach a goal and they want to lose, let's say like just 10 pounds in the next 3 months. Okay. And let's say they set that goal and they go to the gym and eat healthier, but they don't really have those steps in there, right? So they're like, I'm just going to go to the gym more this year and I'm going to eat healthier. The goal's probably going to fall apart, right? And if you're helping them, this is kind of where you come in. First of all, they need that intention, that why. First of all, why do they even want to lose 10 pounds? Like, is this just some arbitrary number? Like, what is it? Is it because they actually want to have more energy to spend time with their kids or their grandkids, or because they want to have more confidence, right? Or maybe they just want to simply fit into their favorite jeans again and feel more attractive and beautiful, right? I mean, there could be any number of reasons, but we got to bring that to the surface, right? And then those sub steps, or those mini steps, as Laura's saying, they really matter, because if you start looking at it week by week and day by day, all these little mini steps are going to add up to the goal. And it's really like a roadmap to the goal, right? But without the roadmap, it's very easy to get off track. So in this case, you might be helping the person to look at their calendar, which actual days of the week that, they actually are planning on exercising. What days are they going to cook? What days are they going to shop? Which day are they going to give themselves a break and a day of rest? These are just examples, but the whole point is taking that bigger goal, creating that intention behind it, and breaking it down is really creating a step-by-step roadmap from where they are now to where they want to be. And then, yeah, somewhere along that roadmap, they're going to get off track, but then we can just get back on the roadmap versus saying, oh, this isn't going to happen. This is impossible, right? Because we have those steps. They're there for us. So I love what you're saying, Laura. Yes, you got to make it tinier and easier. And sometimes we don't know exactly what that's going to look like and how many steps there are going to be, but going through the process, I think, is super important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I think it's great to like brainstorm, what are all the possible steps, like with your weight loss example, like what are all the ways that are going to support me in reaching that goal? And then kind of identifying a few of them maybe that you want to start with, but they're tiny. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk more about breaking this down, because I have a thought on that I want to share, but I want to move to step 3 first, because I want to talk about this on a bigger level. For those of you who are out there making an impact, step 3 is make an impact. And this is all about making goals really beyond ourselves or even the people we're helping, but kind of on a bigger level, like how we're going to live in this world, how we're going to make an impact, oftentimes with the work that we do in our business or our careers and our coaching practice, right? And so when it comes to these professional goals, I can say this, that things can start to get overwhelming. First of all, you probably already have a ton on your plate personally, right? Or in relationship to others. And then now you have these other goals you want to bring in. And sometimes you may not know all the steps, right? And there can be a lot of sub steps to do to reach a professional or business goal. And sometimes there's certain things that they can feel like they're also outside of your control, right? Or even outside of your comfort zone for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a coach like many of our listeners and you're starting a new business, let's just use that as an example. You might find yourself wearing all of a sudden a lot of different hats, maybe hats that you've never worn before, right? You're wearing the coaching hat. Yes, but I'm wearing a marketing hat now. I'm wearing an accounting hat. I'm wearing the office manager hat and the customer relations hat. You're like, oh, what did I get myself into? So what can happen is that your goals can sometimes get lost, I think, in the to-do list, because there's the to-do list of real things that, yes, you have to do and respond to, right? And then there's the bigger goals that are going to move you forward with your business and career. So there's a balance between those things because they're both realities. But I think one of the ways to work with that is, yeah, you want to set that big intention like you did for yourself in step one. You want to do it for your business and your career, just like you're doing for your personal. But business wise, I think when you match that intention to an impact you want to have, that can be powerful. So it's like, why do I want to have a full coaching practice, right? It's not just that because I want to. What impact am I going to be making if I do that? Right. So this is all around what I call an impact intention. What's the impact that you want to have with your goal or with your intention? So, for example, instead of saying you just want to have a successful business or get a promotion at work or make a certain amount of money, right? A lot of people have money goals. What would it look like if you consider the impact that you would have if you actually reached that goal? Like, what is the impact of that? Example, again, is let's say you want to impact 100 people's lives this year with wellness, right? If that's your intention, then how do you break that down into smaller chunks, right? That might mean, wow, I need to be working with 8 clients per month, for example. Well, how do I make that happen? Oh, I see. I actually have to be going out and doing 3 workshops or virtual talks or being out there at least 3 times a month. Because when I do, I tend to be connecting with at least 10 people in each of those scenarios, right? And this is the amount of people that I end up connecting with that are a good fit. So you really do have to look at this and start breaking it down. And it's crucial because I think then what happens is you compare those little chunks that are on the roadmap, those sub steps, those mini steps, as Laura said, and you compare that then to your to-do list. And this is a good exercise. We all have the to-do list. And you might find that your to-do list has actually little to do with the bigger goal and all those sub steps. And then you're like, oh no, now what? Right. And knowing that we all only have 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, we all have the same amount of time. You have to start looking at what you're really going to be able to focus your time and energy on and what matters most, which kind of comes back to that impact that you want to make. And this is really a time to get real with yourself about how you're going to spend your time and energy. And you might have to start slaying some dragons along the way and cutting out some stuff that just really doesn't match with your bigger vision and your goals and where you're going. And this can be really hard to do at first, but I would say this, if you only look at the to-dos, or if you look at all the to-dos first, you're going to realize that you don't have enough time for the mini steps and the smaller chunks that are going to take you to the goal. Right? So it's super important to start looking at all these other activities on the to-do list and seeing what needs to go. And it might feel at first like nothing can go, but I guarantee you there's probably some things you're doing over there that you don't need to be doing. That could be delegated, that could be outsourced, or you just actually don't have to be doing. But until we kind of consciously bring these to the forefront and look at these side by side, oftentimes we just feel like these are things I have to be doing, right? So I think it's super important to bring it to the forefront, look at it even on paper. And Laura, I know you have a specific process that you follow to make your goals that we've talked about before. And it really involves getting those goals in the right buckets too. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and real quick before we go into that too, I just wanted to say I loved your point about really clearing, because that's kind of one of the first steps that we talked about in step one, or one of the tips in step one is really start with clearing what's not serving you. So I love that you kind of brought that to the forefront again. Like that's such a great point. Okay, so I'm super excited to share this. And some of you guys may have heard this before, but it's called a WHAM. And this is my strategy that I use each and every week in my business. So WHAM stands for Weekly Accountability Meeting. This is actually taken from, or the concept is from the 12-Week Year book by Brian Moran, highly recommend. And basically what it is it's a system so that you not only identify your big picture goals, but you're also like making progress towards them each and every single week. You're focused on them every single week, sort of rain or shine, vacation or not. And I'll get into that in a minute, but it's really what helps me to stick with my goals. So I no longer do New Year's resolutions, or, I don't have all those like frustrating starts and stops. Like, it's not perfect, but this is such a great way to sort of get out of that if that's been a struggle or challenge for you. So basically what it is you're going to identify your top 2 to 5 big picture goals for the next 90 days. And that's also another shift. Hence the title of the book is the 12-week year. So we're not even looking sort of annually. We're breaking that even down into smaller chunks. And so we're looking at really the next 90 days. And I really recommend like 3 goals. Some of you guys may have, 1 less or 1 or 2 more, but I really would stop at 5 because, like you said, Suzanne, like there's only so many hours in the day. So like for me personally, I have 3 goals. I have 2 business goals and then 1 personal / like self-care / health goal. So because I'm in business for myself, my 2 business goals, I have a revenue generating goal because without it, I don't have a business. And then a list building goal because without it, I don't have a business.
Well
So,
said.
yeah, critically important there. And so what then you will do then is brainstorm as many sub steps or brainstorm all the different ways as you kind of went through a moment ago, Suzanne, go through as many ideas and ways that you can start to make progress or even reach those goals. So for example, like a revenue generating goal, it might be that I'm doing workshops and I have a goal of I'm going to do, 10 workshops this year. Or it's, the consulting work I get, I have the pleasure to do with the IWP. It's, seeing clients so many per week. It's, creating new programming, it's promoting my programs, things like that. So it's really specific stuff that ties back to each of those goals. And then, for my health or my self-care goal, it might be that I'm, drinking 100 ounces of water a day. I'm, exercising in the morning, or I'm taking a walk in the afternoon. It might mean that I'm, spending quality time, with my family, whatever the case might be. And it doesn't mean that I'm doing every single one of those things every single day. It's just that overall is what I'm focused on day to day. Does it tie back to these main goals? And so then what you'll do then is every week, and so I do this, on Thursdays at 2 p.m. Central is my time that I have my wham. But what you'll do then is set up a recurring time in your calendar to have your own weekly wham. And it might be that this is just something that you're doing by yourself. It might be that you have a mentor, or for those of you in the IWP program, you've got, a peer coach, or maybe you've got a business coach or some kind of accountability buddy. You can certainly just do this on your own. And really what you'll do, and I've got a template that I'm going to be sharing with you guys too, a free, totally customizable template that we'll be sharing if that's of help. But I'll write out the many sub steps, the many actions that I took that week towards each of those 3 goals. And then I'll give myself kind of a overall execution score. So just basically kind of at a quick glance, like, how do I feel like I kind of did this week? And that's not a time to beat yourself up or to feel guilty or to think, gosh, I should have done more. It's really an opportunity to get a quick glance. Like, if it was a great week, awesome. We're going to celebrate, right? Because we talked about how important celebrating is earlier. If it was not such a great week, we're still going to celebrate because it's not a time to beat yourself up, but we're also going to problem solve, like, okay, maybe what got in the way, or how do I need to set up, next week so that I don't run into the same obstacle again. So it's an opportunity to sort of problem solve. And so then you'll write out your steps for the next week ahead, again, that are going to tie back or help you to make progress towards those 3 or however many you have, those big picture goals. And then once you get your wham done, we're going to immediately celebrate again, because that is so important. But it's really probably the biggest game-changing action I have taken in my business as well as my personal life. So that's why I love talking about this, because it has skyrocketed my productivity and focus, absolutely boosted my results. It's lowered that frustration, as I mentioned earlier, of having those, constant sort of starts and stops and not knowing what I should be working on. And it really helps me to rock my goals week after week, all year long. So I just really cannot encourage you guys to do this enough, really for yourself. So that
Well,
is the wham.
I love that. I've put the link out there and it'll be in the
Oh,
show notes for everybody as well to connect to get that free template that you've offered because I think it's helpful to hear it, but then it's like, okay, let me see what this actually
mhm.
looks like. But I love Laura. One of the things I love most is that you just like schedule this appointment with yourself, right?
Yeah.
Like, how often do we have hundreds of appointments going on every month and other things that are all about, other to-dos and other people, but we don't really schedule that for ourselves.
Mhm. Mhm.
So just doing that is an amazing first step for those of you just getting started. Like if you even just carved out 30 minutes to look at like what's up ahead and where you want to go, that in itself could be game changing. I love
Mhm.
that you have this kind of system that you follow around this and it's made such an impact for you. Now, here's kind of a juicy question on this. Do you ever have a scenario where you've set a goal and you have these many subsets, but like you're like, wait, these are not the right steps, or these steps aren't moving me to the goal? Is there ever a moment of like freak out, like, wait a second, these goals don't actually, these steps aren't working? Or for those
Mhm.
people who are new at goal setting, like, what if those goals, they don't know what the sub steps are, or they're the wrong sub steps? Like, how do you evaluate that?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I will say before I started this process, I did have more of that. But one of the big keys that's different about this is that you're doing this every 90 days. So you're not waiting like, let's say November and all of a sudden it's like, gosh, I really had wanted to launch that course or create that signature system and I just never got around to it. So you're and the fact that you're reviewing this every week. So there's never this moment where it's like, oh my gosh, where did, like where did the last 6 months go or
Yeah.
what have you? So I think that's one thing that's really different. I also like, in fact, I just set up my new WAM, my new next quarter WAM just over the weekend. And I did change some things. So yeah, it's a fluid document. If you're starting to notice that, oh, I finished this task, so I can sort of remove that from the list. Or, oh, I've got a new idea on a way that I can, build my list. I'm going to add that to my WAM. So it's definitely a fluid document. But I love the fact that you don't have to wait, weeks or months are going by. This is something you're checking in every week. And I will say
Yep.
too, it may take a little bit of time to set this up, like a little bit of time. Like it probably took me maybe half an hour to an hour to really get clear in the beginning. But now that I do these WAMs every week, it's probably less than 10 minutes. But the impact, and I know we've been talking about, impact today, the impact is huge because I don't waste all of that time, not sure what I'm supposed to be doing, what I'm supposed to be working on, having these kind of vague goals. It's really really clear. And that builds confidence too.
Yeah, and I love that you check in, like you said, it's fluid. So you create something, but because you're checking in often, you can be like, oh, wait, this isn't exactly working. I need to
Mhm.
insert this or change this. So it's not like you put it down on paper, it's set in stone, and you have to like stick to this rigid thing. You have these check
Mhm.
ins, which I think makes it so valuable because you really are checking in with yourself. And it's a reality check about what's working, what's not. And maybe you need more support in one area, or you need to figure out how to fill in one of those steps, but you have that awareness because you're literally scheduling in that time to look at it.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Love it, everybody. Setting your goals. I think we've covered a lot so far, right? Like, first, there's this idea that's about your personal, right? And this can tie into how you're making an impact in the world as well. But like setting that intention, what's the big why behind all of this, right? We're not just putting out random goals and like hoping to get there, right? And then we're chunking them down, we're making them into smaller steps, both for ourselves and if we're supporting others to reach their goals, right? Those action items. And then there's this key piece about making an impact. Like, what is it, why does this really matter if we're doing it on a bigger scale? Like, how does this really look? And Laura's system helps us to check in with where we're going along the journey so that we don't totally fall off the bandwagon, that we stay on track. And these really are the three steps to creating lasting success with your goals. This has been such a fun conversation, Laura, talking about this today.
Ah, I love it. I wanted to add one other thing about the WAM is that, this process can be something that you can help your clients with as well. So for those of you that are wellness coaches, like it can be, I just think the idea of regularly checking in with yourself and having that kind of like planning and reflection and like having it as a GPS is such a great skill for all of us to have. So whether you use it exactly in the way that I've, you know, kind of used it for myself, or you find a different way that works for you, I just think the process is so helpful. So it can be great for us to use personally, and then maybe to use with our clients as well.
I love that you said GPS, right? Because if we were going on a road trip, we wouldn't just get in the car and start driving. We have a goal to get somewhere, right? But we wouldn't be like, well, I hope I get there. We'd be like, what are the checkpoints? Where's the rest stop, right? Where's the hotel? Where's the check-in with myself? Here's the map, right? So it's literally kind of a metaphor for the reality of our life. But so often we just kind of go with the flow and see what happens, right? And there's some element of going with the flow that's important on our journey, but we also have to match it up with having a plan. So it's really a balance between those things. Yeah, I love it. I love the GPS analogy though. Let's switch gears now. Go to all of our holistic wellness coaches who are joining us for this live episode for our coaches talk back. And let's get started. I'd love to hear, this is a great time for questions, thoughts, feedback, but I would love to hear from one person live who had a breakthrough today on maybe what they're going to do next, on how you're going to set your goal for the year ahead, or perhaps a goal that you want to share with everyone. Let's see if anybody out there wants to share it. Let me check. Sabrina's raising her hand. Hi, Sabrina.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. This is great for me because I like the specificity of chunking it down, because that is, I love what placing the intention behind it, because sometimes it's so broad. Like even when you gave the example of the modules, right? Oh, I have to get module, 5 done by this week, but no, maybe let me just do the C-section of module 5, so that would really, I think be beneficial, because you're not setting yourself up for failure, right? You're setting yourself up for success. So I really love the mini chunking. I really like that. And I like the wham. Yeah. So this was great for me. So thank you.
That's awesome, Sabrina. Excited for you to see how you put your goals together. And another thing that's kind of coming through, I'd love to hear from someone else as well. Just go ahead, raise your hand. But as we're waiting for somebody, I'll mention, I know for myself, sometimes I can fill these kind of things in, but sometimes I feel pressure, like, oh, it's going to be so much to do, or what if I don't reach it by the date that I had? And I think what is important about what Laura said as well, being fluid, is that like, it's important to get it down on paper, but just know that if you don't, you might have to adjust. You might be like, by February 1st, I'm doing, these are the certain things I'm doing. And you might actually be actively moving toward them, but they ended up taking longer than you thought. Or there were some roadblocks that came along the way, right? Maybe something happened in your personal life and you're like, oh no, and you got off track. And like, it's about being gentle with yourself about that, but also knowing, hey, I'm not throwing this out the window. I'm moving this now to March 1st or whatever it is. So that, it's important to set it, but it's also important to know that if you have to move it a little bit, you can, right? It's for you, right? Like no one's saying this has to go this way. Like this is for you. And so it's showing up for yourself, I think, in an important way, but knowing that it is fluid. All right. Anybody else out there? I see Heidi. Give you a microphone.
Yeah. Hi, thank you. What kind of resonated with me is that I struggle a little bit with the all or nothing kind of mindset. And so for me, say doing module 5, if that's the goal, it kind of feels like a bigger goal. And if I'm not able to do all of it, then maybe I don't do any of it. But if you're chunking down and my goal is to jump on what Sabrina said, if my goal is just to do the 360, the wellness part of that, maybe that is the all rather than the entire module. The all is just the smaller part. And so it doesn't feel so big. And so then you're not struggling with all or nothing if the all is really tiny. So I like that. I think that's helpful. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing, Heidi. Yeah. And like the goal is still, okay, I'm going to eventually complete module 5. What are all those steps to get there? But the cool thing is you have those little goals along the way, and you can, and I like how Laura said earlier, you know, celebrating those little steps is like, oh, this was a part of getting to that goal. Yeah. So I'm glad that was helpful for you.
Yeah, I love that idea too of like, because I remember when I went through the program, it at times did, when I would say, okay, I need to finish this module by this date, that can feel overwhelming. And you're exactly right. Heidi was like, oh, I don't, you know, but when I started to get really, really clear and really break it down, then I was able to actually cross it off. Because when I saw my to-do list, let's say finish module 10, and I couldn't get that done that day, that felt defeating. It felt kind of like frustrating or disappointing. But when I had you know, wellness messengers of module 10 done, that I could cross off, and that felt really good. And it's kind of that idea of like success begets success. And that's another reason why we make our, you know, goals and our habits so tiny. It's because it's really clear, and it's so much easier then to have success with it. And we want to keep having more success.
Yeah. I love that. Let's see, Chantel is raising her hand.
Yes, hi. So thank you, Laura and Suzanne, for the great tips. I just want to add to, you know, people were saying it's a great idea to break down the goals for our modules in our program. And this is what I've been doing, and it works super well. You know, not only saying, okay, this month I'll complete this module, but every week saying, okay, what exactly in that module I'll be able to accomplish. And what I like to do is look at my planning at the same time, saying, can I actually do much this week, or do I have to reduce my expectation based on other commitments? And the better tip I have, or what I did, that was even more effective, is I'm sharing those goals with another peer coach. So each week we share our goals, business-wise, but also for the program. And so we have an accountability, and it works super well. So, yeah.
Love that.
I love that about the accountability partner, wherever you are in your journey, whether you're in this training program, whether you're considering being in this training program, whether you're just working on your own personal goals and health and wellness, or in your own career, having somebody who's got your back and who's there to really be that support person is so huge. It really, really is. I've had accountability partners in the past. And I mean, there was one year that my accountability partner and I would get on the phone every morning at 8 a.m. for 10 minutes. And we would each take 5 minutes and read our vision for the year and like what we were doing. I can't tell you, that year was phenomenal because those visions became realities for both of us. And I can tell you it was because of the accountability partner and being able to voice every day the path that you were on and where you were and how you were getting there. So wherever you are in your journey, find that support person because it's super important. If you're like, oh, I just don't have a support person, you can also start with yourself. You can use that journal and be like, I'm talking to myself today, right? So there's ways to make it happen. But if you can find someone who can share with you, that can be really, really helpful as well. Susan is sharing that she loves a reminder about having personal goals along with professional ones. And when it comes to professional goals, she uses chunking, though sometimes with personal goals, she doesn't. She just has all these things in her head. You got to go shopping, you got to go running or whatever. Yeah. Like you might be finding you're like really good at doing it in one area of your life, like with your family or your kids' schedule or with your career, but you're like not doing it for yourself. Right. So I love that because, this applies to any goal you're really working toward. And if you're successful in one area doing it, then your next level is like, okay, how do I also do this for myself? And because sometimes we don't think about setting goals for our own like self-care or our own wellness, right? Because we're like, that'll just, you know, I'll get it. I'll squeeze that in at the end if I can. But yeah, these things are just as important, right? To make sure we're creating the space for them.
I love that point too, because that's why I love the WHAM, because I do include a personal goal. And so I'm not forced, but the intention is very clear. Like, what am I doing this week? Each and every single week, what am I doing today that is going to promote my health or my self-care or just my personal goal? So that too, just being that accountability is huge. So it doesn't, because it is easy to, you know, get into your day, or to think that other people's needs, or, even your business stuff or your studies takes priority. And we need to have ourselves somewhere in that mix too.
Anybody else out there have any feedback, thoughts, goals they want to share, things they're going to do differently? Let's go over to Alex.
Hi.
Hi, Alex.
Yeah, I just wanted to share that I really resonated with the first step, uncovering your intentions. That was really great because I was reflecting. I'm actually wanting to write a blog on goals in the new year for January. And so it was really kind of well suited, but I was thinking about my own goals over the years and what I've set. And I realized that looking back on them, quite often the ones that don't have a lot of importance to me, I don't speak them aloud. I don't tell anyone. I keep them to myself, and I kind of say, oh, I'm kind of setting this goal, but it's never really out there. And so if I don't achieve it, it's not a big deal. And the first time I really committed to something and told people about it was when I wanted to run a half marathon. And there was a lot of purpose behind that, a lot of intention, because I told myself I was struggling to achieve things, and I wanted to tell myself, if I work hard enough at something, I can achieve it. And so that was my intention behind running a half marathon, and I did it. And it was the greatest feeling when I achieved that goal, because I had so much intention behind it. So that really rung true to me. And then the idea of that impact as well, coming in, like my New Year goal is, as of January, I want to become vegan, and I'm a little bit worried about it, but I know what my intentions behind it are, and that just kind of helped to empower that idea, and that I know I can achieve it. And as being a wellness coach, I want to sort of share my journey, so that impact can kind of come in and link in well with those intentions. So that all kind of resonated very strongly with me.
Thanks for sharing, Alex. I love how you brought that intention to the marathon, because it makes it so much bigger than just completing. Like, you proved to yourself something that now applies to all the other things that you want to achieve, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really great. And just the intention about wanting to share your journey and story with others as a wellness coach, right? This is really huge too, right? Because that's why so many of us go on this path, right? Because we've been through something. We've been through our own challenges. We've been through some maybe health crisis. We've healed ourselves in some way. Like, that's why you decided to become a wellness coach. Then you go through the journey, you're out on the other end, and you're helping people. You might have lost a little, you might have forgotten about why you decided to do that, right? But that's why we want to bring that through as we're stepping out in the world, because it's truly about sharing your story and bringing that forth to other people. And I think that intention about why you decided to do this in the first place is an amazing way, because that creates that connection with other people, and it creates that motivation and passion for you to remember why you're really here and why you're doing this. So I'm glad you reflected on that as well. Does anybody else have any other fun, simple ways to celebrate after accomplishing a goal? Let's see. Let's give Sabrina a mic.
I actually forgot to mention that. That
Okay.
is something that I really like. I started doing a 30-day shred, and in the middle of it, it was so intense. And I was like, you got this, girl. I'm so proud of you. And that just triggered something in me. And it just happened yesterday. So Laura, when you said to celebrate yourself, because I used to do a happy dance all the time, and I forgot about that. I forgot about celebrating myself. So that was just really exciting. So I'm so happy that you brought that up.
That's
So important to celebrate. So thank you.
I love that you experienced that literally in a workout. Like, you experience what the shift that can create. Love that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing. And I think too, like, you might be listening today being like, okay, like, that sounds silly. Like, I don't need to like give myself the pep talk. Like I don't need to do it. But if you're feeling that resistance, I'm going to invite you to give it a try, because more than likely, that's probably what's actually required for you to acknowledge yourself in that way and to do something. And your version of celebration, it can be different for everybody else, right? But I think oftentimes we just totally dismiss these things, again, as we said earlier. So try a few different things, see what feels good, see what feels right, but don't just dismiss it and kind of move on. You're going to be missing a big part. And it really comes down to kind of a soul level, right? Like we are more than just, as you said before, Laura, more than just like doers, and we are beers. And we have to oftentimes make that connection back to ourselves, to talk to that part of ourselves, that's that inner part of ourselves, right? To support ourselves. And oftentimes we're the only one who's going to do that. So you've got to do that for yourself.
Mhm. Yeah. And I mean, let alone like the research, there's really research behind, celebration and how it does truly wire these habits and these, these goals and things like that into our brains more quickly and more deeply. So I don't know about, you guys, but I'm like, if doing a little happy dance is going to bring me there, like I'm in. Might feel silly, but that's okay.
And for some of you, it may be like more something that's more like inward. It might be a ritual that you do. Like it could be like, hey, I'm going to like light a candle and do some sort of self-care ritual or something that feels very relaxing, right? It might look differently, but that's where the exploration piece comes. And I think that's where the fun can be in discovering what it is for you. Anybody else out there have anything to share around goals? And let's go to Vessela. Hi, Vessela.
Hi, Suzanne. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I would like to share something that's probably a little bit controversial and see what your opinion or views are on that. But first of all, I wanted to start by saying that I really can relate to, I'm really sort of converted into visualization. I have 2 vision boards, accountability, especially through the IWP. I have some fantastic peer coaches, and I do see how this actually works when you have people who really support you. Something that I would like to address in the future is about the celebration, because I don't do much of that. So this will be probably my action step to take away from today's workshop. But what I wanted to sort of controversial to share with you is around, and I don't know how many people can relate with that. It depends probably where you are originally. But I think culturally, from where I come from, often goals or sharing dreams, people feel a bit superstitious about that, so they don't want to share them with other people. And often I feel there is a little bit of sort of negative energy around that, especially if you're a highly sensitive person or an empath. So I think I had some experiences in terms of probably sharing my goals at work and asking for some support or accountability partners, and actually it worked against me to some extent. I didn't feel comfortable, and I think I've learned from there that I need to be careful with who I also share my goals. But I just wanted to ask you how you if someone can relate to what I mentioned in terms of superstition or negative energy felt by sharing your goals, if you have experienced that, and if you have any sort of tips in terms of how you dealt with that feeling of fear to share, and then how you dealt if you've shared something and then you perhaps regretted it.
Well, I love that, Vessela. I'm glad you brought that to the forefront. I think it's such an important point. And I would say I kind of resonate with where you are with that. My husband, for example, he's a person who just tells everybody what he's going to do. And I'm always like, wait, don't say that yet, right? I'm more like you. I want to kind of keep it to myself, keep it a little bit more inward. So I think we have to, first of all, recognize where we are. Some of us voicing it brings it into reality big time. And it doesn't matter who we voice it to. Others, who we voice it to beyond ourselves is a sacred space, and it's really sensitive, and it's a container for that intention. right? So that container, again, might just have to be you through your journaling process. But if there's someone that can help hold that container in that sacred space for you, then that's a little bit different than maybe just telling, your coworker or maybe even a friend. It might be somebody who's got to kind of be on the same page as you, who really gets you and who isn't there to judge the goal, judge the vision, or to be like, anything about it. They're really just there to kind of hold the space. And that's what's huge about it. It's not about when you're having that accountability partner. Yeah, you're checking in, but it's not a place of like, them really being attached to whether you're reaching the goal or not. It's really for you. So I hear you on that. And I think it's, you have to feel into that, because especially as you're going for new goals in your life, right? Like you might be actually creating your own inner transformation. You might be like changing a paradigm of like other relationships you've had, of, family relationships. Like you might be stepping outside what is seen as normal and regular in your lineage, in a sense, right? You're like, hey, I'm actually going out and starting my own career. I'm dreaming big and I'm going to make an impact. And people are like, what? Right? So like sharing your goal with those who maybe aren't on the same path could feel like it may not feel right. So like, I appreciate what you said. And I think you have to feel into that and know that is it a sacred space, and it's a sensitive topic, and it's something that, you want to make sure it's the right person you are sharing with.
I love that. Thank you.
Well, everybody, it has been so much fun being here with everybody on this fun topic, goal setting for lasting success. I hope you guys have taken something away today, even if it's just one small step that you can apply to your own goals and intentions as you move into the year ahead. Thanks, everybody. And thanks, Laura, for being here with me for this fun conversation.
Thanks, Suzanne. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you for joining me for today's episode of Live Well, Dream Big. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation, and I want to invite you to take your next step toward living well and dreaming big by downloading the Live Well, Dream Big lifestyle book. It's the ultimate guide to becoming your best self and living life on your own terms. You can grab your complimentary copy by going to the link in the show notes or heading directly to iawpwellnesscoach.com/guide. That's iawpwellnesscoach.com/guide.